Welcome to the new horror story. I never imagined the silence of nature could be so loud. Crickets chirped in a slow mechanical rhythm like they were clocking in for a night shift, and the occasional hoot of an owl felt more like a warning than background noise. My name is Ethan Cole, and what was supposed to be a dream move into the countryside with my wife Rachel has turned into something unspeakable. I'm writing this down because I don't know if I'll make it through tonight. And anyone, needs to know the truth about what happened at the old vicar's farmhouse. Let me start from the beginning. Rachel and I had been talking about leaving the city for a couple of years. The constant rush, the blaring horns, and the never-ending anxiety of city life were suffocating us. She was 6 months pregnant with our first child when we decided to finally make the jump. I'd been working remote since the pandemic, and she had taken maternity leave early due to a few complications. We found the listing online: 2 hectares of land, a fully restored early 1900s farmhouse, a functioning barn, and a crop of corn that apparently practically grows itself. It was in a small secluded part of northern Arkansas, just outside a dying town called West Hollow. The realtor, a guy named Dean, told us the owner had passed away a year ago. No family, no heirs, just a house and a field sitting empty. "It's a little gem," Dean said, flashing us a perfect smile over Zoom. "Most people don't appreciate land like this anymore. You, too, well, y'all seem like you'd get it." Rachel smiled, her hands resting gently on her bump. "It's perfect," she whispered to me, "exactly what we talked about, and it was for the first few days anyway." We arrived in late April, just before dusk. The air was cool, the sky streaked with orange and lavender. The gravel road crunched under our tires as we pulled up to the house. It was small but charming. White paint, dark green shutters, a wraparound porch that creaked under our steps. Behind the house, the cornfield loomed, already taller than I expected for early spring. Rachel stepped out with our golden retriever, Max, who immediately bounded around the yard like he'd found heaven. She stood there just soaking it in, her brown curls catching the evening light. "This feels right," she said. I smiled and started unloading the truck. That first night was peaceful. We lit some candles, cracked open a bottle of cheap red wine, and toasted to new beginnings. We fell asleep to the sound of crickets and a faint breeze whispering through the corn. But the second night, everything changed. Max started barking sometime around 2:00 a.m., not his usual bark. This was frantic, like he was in a fight or something. I threw on my jacket and grabbed a flashlight. Rachel right behind me. "Max," I called, stepping into the yard. The barking led us around to the back of the house. The cornfield swayed unnaturally in the still night air. Then the barking stopped. I froze. Rachel whispered, "Do you hear that?" I did. A soft rustling in the corn. Steady, deliberate, not wind, not animals. I pointed my flashlight toward the rows, but the beam only illuminated the first few stalks. Then we saw it. A scarecrow. It stood about 10 feet in, arms stretched unnaturally long, burlap face tilted slightly down, as if it was watching us. It hadn't been there earlier. I was sure of it. It wore an old denim shirt and a sun hat so rotted it barely clung to its twined skull. Rachel clutched my arm. "Ethan, is that blood?" I squinted. In the flashlight beam, I could just make out the dark stain at the hem of the scarecrow's shirt. Crimson dried. I took a cautious step forward, and just then something moved behind it. A flicker of motion too fast to see clearly. Rachel screamed. I spun around, but there was nothing, just the whisper of the cornfield. Max was never seen again. The next day we searched everywhere. I even walked the entire field with a machete clearing rows. I found no trace, no blood, no fur, and the scarecrow gone, vanished. Rachel wanted to leave. I didn't blame her, but I convinced her to give it one more night, promising to call animal control and the sheriff if things got worse. That evening, Dean, the realtor, stopped by to drop off some property papers we'd missed. He noticed how tense we were. "You folks all right?" he asked. I hesitated, then decided to be honest. Did the previous owner have any trouble out here? Strange stuff. Dean's smile faltered. Trouble? Nah, nothing serious, but his tone was off. What about the scarecrows? Rachel asked. He froze. Scarecrows in the field. There was one last night. Disappeared by morning. Dean swallowed hard. That field was so for 2 years before y'all bought it. Owner couldn't maintain the crops, so no scarecrows. He shook his head. Shouldn't be. He left quickly after that, muttering something about having to get back before dark. That night I stayed up. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat by the living room window facing the field. Rachel slept fitfully upstairs. Around midnight I saw them, not one, not two, five scarecrows scattered unevenly throughout the cornfield, all facing the house, and they were closer than before. I didn't sleep. In the morning they were gone. I started researching the property. Turned out the land had belonged to a man named Illy Vickers. He'd gone missing the year before, assumed dead. Rumor in town was that he went crazy before he disappeared. Started babbling about something called the harvest. I found an old post in a local forum, anonymous, poorly written, but it chilled me to the bone. Never walk in the corn after sundown. The harvest don't like new blood. They watch, they wait, they feed. That night, Rachel woke me up sobbing. I saw them, she whispered. They were at the window. I ran through the house. All the doors and windows were locked, but something had been at our bedroom window. Scratches. 4 long, deep scratches along the glass. I called the sheriff the next morning. A tired, dull-looking man named Harris came out, listened to my story, then gave me a long stare. You're not the first new folks to complain about strange goings out here, he said. What happened to them? He lit a cigarette. They left or vanished. One guy burned the whole damn field down before running off. Never charged him. Figured whatever he saw was punishment enough. I asked him what he thought was really happening. You got bad land, he muttered. You can fence off bad dogs, but bad land. He shook his head. That don't go away. That night was the worst. At exactly 11 p.m., the air went still. No crickets, no wind, just the rhythmic clang of a bell. I didn't own a bell. I grabbed Rachel and bolted down the stairs. From the window we saw them all around the house, not scarecrows anymore. People, twisted, rotted things dressed in farmers' clothes, skin peeling like old wallpaper, hollow eyes, burlap sacks over decayed faces. Each one held a weapon. A rusted sickle, a blood-stained scythe, a machete. They weren't standing still anymore. They were walking. We tried to escape through the back, but they'd blocked the doors. We could hear them scratching, whispering in a language neither of us understood. We ran into the basement. That's when we found it. A room hidden behind an old shelf. Inside were dozens of dusty books, animal bones, jars of what I hoped were herbs, but probably weren't, and a crude drawing painted on the wall. A man hanging upside down, surrounded by cornstalks. Below it, a phrase written in what looked like dried blood. The blade feeds the roots bring the harvest never ends. We heard a voice behind us, should have put up the cross. It was the old man from town, Mr. Harlon, the one who ran the antique shop. I hadn't even heard him come in. He held up a wooden crucifix, just like the one the last owner supposedly had. They only take who doesn't heed, he said, but it's too late now. We are barricaded in the basement. I don't know how long the door will hold. They're breaking through. I can hear Rachel sobbing. If someone finds this, burn the field. Don't listen to the realtor. Don't trust them. Quiet, don't ignore the scarecrows, and whatever you do, don't stay for the harvest. The story ends with the sound of splintering wood, a final scream, and then silence. I never expected a weekend getaway to mess with my mind so deeply that I'd question what was real and what wasn't. Clark and I were both burned out. I worked customer relations for a solar company, and Clark was managing night shifts at a small warehouse outside the city. It had been a brutal month. Overtime, skipped meals, short tempers, and barely any time together. That's when he suggested we take a break. Just 2 days at a lakeside farmhouse he found online. It looked perfect, remote, peaceful, surrounded by woods and no cell reception. At the time, the lack of service felt like a bonus. Now I know better. The place was called Greystone Lake Farm, tucked somewhere off a forgotten rural road near the border of Vermont and New York. It had a 4-star rating on a niche travel blog, and Clark had contacted the owner, a man named Elliot Grange, who ran the place alone. The blog mentioned rustic charm, amazing food, and a back-to-nature experience. I just wanted to sleep in, read a book, and maybe have wine by the lake. We left on a Friday around 5:00 p.m., and by 8 I was curled up in the passenger seat with a blanket over my legs, half asleep while Clark drove. The sun had just dipped below the tree line, casting long shadows across the 2-lane road. Then, all at once, Clark slammed the brakes. I jolted forward, banging my knee against the glove compartment. "Jesus, Clark," I gasped. "What the hell?" He didn't answer. His hands were locked on the wheel, his eyes wide and unfocused, like he was trying to process something he'd seen. "Clark." I touched his arm. He finally blinked and turned to me, his face pale. There was someone, a guy in the road. I leaned forward to look. The road ahead was empty, just cracked asphalt and dense woods. "There's no one there," I said slowly. "You're tired. Maybe you saw an animal." "No," he insisted. He was just standing there, and then he vanished. I tried not to sound patronizing. "Babe, you've been working doubles all week. Your eyes are playing tricks on you." He didn't argue. He just opened the door and stepped out. I got out, too, pulling my hoodie tighter. The air was colder now, the wind sharper. Clark was scanning the tree line, stepping a few feet into the brush. He was right here. I saw his face. "There's nothing out here," I said gently. "Let's switch. I'll drive the rest of the way." We made the last 40 minutes in silence, save for the occasional hum of static from the radio. I played our favorite playlist and massaged his neck at red lights, trying to shake the unease he wore like a second skin. Then we pulled up to Greystone Lake Farm, and any sense of comfort evaporated. There was a tall, stony-faced man standing at the gate, holding a rifle, not in a relaxed, slung-over-the-shoulder way. "Number?" He was gripping it, finger near the trigger. I slowed down. You think that's Grange?" "I hope so," Clark muttered. We rolled down the window. "Hi," I said, trying to sound casual. "We're here for the weekend stay. You must be Elliot." The man nodded once. "Farms close to strangers after dark. Wolves." I blinked. "Wolves." He stepped aside, opening the gate. "You'll be safe inside. Come in." The farmhouse was old but beautiful in a haunting sort of way. Deep green ivy climbed up the stone walls. A wraparound porch overlooked the still mirror-like lake. The inside smelled like cedar and clove, with warm amber lights and weathered wooden beams across the ceiling. We had barely stepped inside when Elliot appeared again, silently carrying our bags up the stairs. I laughed nervously. He's efficient. Clark was quiet, watching Elliot's back. That night, after a dinner of roasted duck and garlic potatoes served by Elliot himself, we collapsed in bed. The silence was so complete it felt unnatural. No bugs, no frogs, just the occasional creak of the house settling. Around 2:00 a.m., a loud gunshot cracked through the air. I sat up, heart racing. "Clark, did you hear that?" He groaned, half asleep. "Probably a wolf." I slipped out of bed and stepped onto the balcony. That's when I saw her. A woman in a long white dress was standing on the roof terrace across the courtyard. She had a rifle slung over her shoulder. Her hair was wet, plastered to her cheeks. I called out, "Hey, are you okay?" She didn't respond, just turned and walked away. I headed downstairs, curious and uneasy. At the base of the staircase, a hand touched my shoulder. I jumped. Elliot stood behind me, as still as a statue. "Tea is being served by the lake, miss." There was a girl on the terrace. "Who is she? That area is off limits." "Is she a guest?" He didn't answer, just gestured toward the lake. Clark was already sitting there, blurred. I whispered what I saw. He started to say something, but stopped when another woman emerged from the lake. She walked slowly, her white gown soaked, clinging to her frame. She didn't look at us, didn't speak, just walked past and disappeared into the woods. I shivered. That's the second one. Something's wrong here. When we pressed Elliot about the women, he only said, "Guest information is private." Then he handed us rifles. Hunting time. Clark and I exchanged looks. Wait, like real hunting? Elliot gave a rare smile. Simulation, trust me. We followed him into the woods. He pointed. Clark missed a shot. Then he pointed for me. I fired. A second later, we heard a blood-curdling animal shriek. I ran to check, but Elliot held up a Bluetooth speaker with a smirk. Very lifelike, yes. I laughed awkwardly. The whole thing felt off, but Clark seemed to enjoy the distraction. Dinner that night was oddly delicious. Spiced meat curry with rice and grilled vegetables. I asked Elliot, "What's in this? It's amazing." He stared for a moment. Human, I choked. He burst into deep, rasping laughter. Joke, he said. I'll give you the recipe when you leave. But something in his eyes said it wasn't a joke. We went to bed early. The food made me feel heavy, almost sedated. Then another gunshot. I jumped up. The woman on the terrace again. Same white dress, same rifle. Down the stairs. Elliot blocking the way. Tea is ready. Same thing, same time. I whispered to Clark. I think we're repeating the day. He raised an eyebrow. You're exhausted. We just need sleep. But it happened again and again. The same girl from the lake, same hunt, same joke at dinner. I tried changing things, eating different food, skipping the hunt, but it reset anyway. By the fourth loop, I woke up early and crept to the terrace. The girl was there, stepping out of a hidden room near the chimney. I followed quietly until she turned and pointed the rifle at me. I screamed and ran, locking the door behind me. Clark, we need to go now. This time he didn't argue. We grabbed our bags and ran to the car. At the gate, Elliot stood with his rifle raised. I didn't stop, just floored the gas. He fired. We heard the bullet graze the trunk, but we made it past. Just as the road split into the highway, a man stepped out in front of us. Clark, brake hard. It was the same man he'd seen the first night. Please, he begged, take me with you. Who are you? I asked. My name's Brandon. I was a guest a month ago. The loop, it won't let you go unless you leave during a gap. What gap? When someone breaks the routine. He showed us his ID, his hands trembling. You broke it tonight by running early. You saved yourselves. We didn't say anything. Just let him in and drove. We didn't stop until we reached a gas station 2 towns over. We never reported it. We never went back. The listing for Greystone Lake Farm vanished a few days later. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see the girl in white, still standing there, still watching. And sometimes when the wind blows through the trees, I swear I hear Elliot's voice. Tea is served by the lake. I grew up believing that land could love you back. When I was a kid, my grandfather used to say, you take care of the land and it'll take care of you. I used to think that was just an old farmer's sentiment, something romanticized from a different era. But after inheriting his 150-acre spread in rural Kentucky, I started to understand what he meant. There's a rhythm to ranch life, a pattern of days ruled by weather, animals, and sunrises that paint the sky so beautifully you forget the world outside even exists. It wasn't fancy, just a modest farmhouse with creaking floors, 2 barns, a chicken coop, and goat pens tucked behind a line of tall oaks. The nearest neighbor was a solid 2 miles down the gravel road, and cell service was spotty on a good day, but I liked it that way. My name's Noah Carter. I moved out here alone after my divorce 2 years ago, needing a reset. Life in the city had worn me thin, too loud, too fast, too damn expensive. The ranch was supposed to be my sanctuary. For a while it was. Spring came late that year. The air was still cool in the mornings, and a late-season rain had turned the dirt trails into soft muck. I woke early like usual, 4:45 a.m., just before first light. That's when the animals start stirring. Goats bleating, rooster testing his lungs. I threw on my flannel, grabbed my mug of coffee, and headed out the back door toward the pen. The mud made my boots stick with every step, but I didn't think much of it until I saw the footprints. They weren't mine, too big, too wide, a man's by the look of it. Heavy boots. They'd walked in a strange path, too, circling the pen twice, then veering toward the porch and disappearing into the woods. At first, I thought maybe my ranch hand, Jesse, had come by to check on a sick goat I mentioned the day before, but Jesse lived half an hour away and wouldn't come without a call. Plus, his boots had a worn left tread. These were solid, clean, newer. Still, I brushed it off. Could have been a lost hiker. Maybe a hunter strayed too far. Hell, maybe even a surveyor from the county, though nobody ever showed up out here without calling first. The next morning, there were more footprints. Same pattern, same size, circling the pen, then stopping just short of the porch before heading back to the woods. I squatted down next to them, pressing my hand into the mud beside one. The print swallowed my palm. Whoever it was, he was big, bigger than me, and quiet. I decided to follow the trail. The woods behind my property were thick with trees and underbrush, but the prints were clear, deep in the wet earth, each step steady and deliberate. I followed them nearly 100 yards until they turned sharply and vanished near the gravel road. No tire tracks, no other sign of where they came from or where they went. That night, I double-locked my doors. Still, I didn't call the sheriff. Not yet. I wasn't the kind of man to panic over a little mystery. Country life brings with it all kinds of strange. You find raccoons in your pantry, foxes in the chicken coop, and once a meth head sleeping under my trailer. You learn to handle things on your own, but the third morning the footprints came back, and this time they weren't alone. There were two sets now. You ever see something like this before? I asked Jesse that afternoon after showing him the trails. He squatted beside the prints, frowning. Looks like they're watching you. I raised an eyebrow, watching the goats more like. Jesse shook his head. Nah, look right here. He pointed to where one set of prints veered off toward my bedroom window just behind the house. They're scoping the place. That's no hunter. I tried to laugh, but it stuck in my throat. That night, I sat on my porch with the lights off and my granddad's old 12-gauge across my lap. I waited. Nothing came until the next night. Around 12:40 a.m., I heard it, the crunch of gravel, slow, deliberate. My porch light was off, but the moon gave just enough silver light to see the outline of a man standing near the pen. Broad shoulders, wearing dark clothing. His head turned toward the house like he was listening. Then I saw the second figure, this one farther back in the shadows just past the tree line, watching, not moving. My heart kicked into overdrive. I eased back inside the house, careful not to let the screen door creak, and slipped into the barn through the side entrance. I had a clear view of the yard from there. They moved like they'd done it before, like they knew the layout. The first man circled the pen again, pausing near the back gate while the other stayed hidden. I could feel their coordination. This wasn't random, so I did the only thing I could think of. I fired 2 warning shots into the air. The sound shattered the stillness. The figure near the pen froze, then turned sharply toward the trees. For a split second, I thought it had worked, that they'd run. Then a gunshot cracked through the night. The round slammed into the barn wall just feet from my head. I dove behind the tractor as another bullet tore through the wooden slats, showering me with splinters. I crawled across the barn, ducking low, heart hammering in my ears. My phone was in the truck. My only chance was to get there. I sprinted through the back door, flung myself into the cab, and yanked the phone from the glove box. My fingers shook as I dialed 911. What is your emergency? 2 armed men, I whispered, on my property. They're shooting. I'm hiding in my barn. 14484 North Ridge Hollow Road. Please hurry. The dispatcher's voice was calm, but I could hear the urgency behind her words. Officers are on the way. Stay hidden. Can you see them now? I peeked through the barn's side window. The yard was empty, too quiet. Then I heard it, the porch steps, wood creaking underweight. They were at the house. For the next half hour I stayed hidden behind hay bales, shotgun clutched tight, listening to the sounds of footsteps and doors creaking open. The intruders were moving slowly, methodically, then silence. 10 minutes later, headlights pierced through the woods, red and blue, sirens wailing in the distance. They must have seen them, too, because the gravel crunched again, this time moving away. I crawled to the window and caught a glimpse of the figure slipping back into the trees. One of them carried something in his hands. By the time the sheriff's deputies arrived, the men were long gone. They swept the property and found fresh bootprints, the same kind I'd seen for days, along with 3 shell casings near the fence. "You think it was poachers?" I asked, voice raw. "Maybe," one of the deputies said, eyeing the woods, "but poachers don't usually shoot back." This was something else. Over the next week, I did everything I could to fortify the place. Security cameras, motion lights, reinforced locks, but the cameras never picked up anything. The footprints never came back, but I felt them watching. Every time I stepped outside, I found myself scanning the terrain, expecting to see movement. Waiting for the night, I'd see those same dark figures standing just beyond the light again. The worst part wasn't the shooting. It was that whoever they were, they knew my land better than I did, and they weren't afraid to come back. Ranch life teaches you a lot of things. How to work hard, how to endure, how to keep going when the days get long and the nights get cold. But it doesn't teach you what to do when the land you love starts to feel like it doesn't love you back. I still live here, still wake up at 4:45 a.m., still walk out to the pen with my coffee. But now I carry a loaded shotgun with me, too, just in case the footprints return. Because out here in the dark acres, help comes late, and not every stranger walks away. In 2016, I was still holding tight to the life I'd inherited, quiet, rooted, and steeped in tradition. Our farm sat on the outskirts of a small town called Winton Grove in southern Illinois. My name's Daniel Hargrove, and I was 32 then, just about to take over full-time for my father after his health started declining. The land had been in our family for 4 generations. Corn, soybeans, wheat, same rhythms, same rituals. Morning walks through the fields, checking irrigation lines, testing soil moisture, watching the skies like a hawk for signs of weather shifts. There's something sacred about a life built on patterns. You rise with the sun, you rest when it sets, and you never ever take shortcuts. That was the rule my father passed on to me. I followed it to the letter. It was a Tuesday morning in mid-September. Cool air, mist rising off the fields like ghost smoke. I remember it so vividly, probably because it was the day my routine cracked. The day I stopped feeling safe on my own land. I'd brought Scout along, my 6-year-old blue heeler, good dog, smart, alert, and loyal to the core. He never strayed more than a few feet from me, always watching with those sharp eyes like he knew it was his job to guard the place just as much as mine. We were walking the north perimeter near the irrigation line that borders the wooded stretch behind the soybean field. That section of the farm always gave me a weird feeling. Something about how the trees pressed in thick and silent like they were listening. I didn't like that side of the property much, but duty's duty. Scout stopped dead in his tracks about halfway along the tree line, ears perked, body stiff. Then came the bark, not the casual kind, not the excited squirrel kind either. This was his warning bark, deep, guttural, and serious. "What is it, boy?" I asked, stepping beside him. He didn't move, just stared into the woods. I followed his gaze and saw it. A patch of trampled grass just past the edge of the tree line. At first, I thought it was where a deer had bedded down, but as I got closer, I saw the outline of a crude fire pit. Blackened stones, ash, a rusted tin can, a crumpled blanket. Someone had been camping here recently. Scout stayed close, growling low under his breath. I crouched down, ran my fingers through the ashes, still slightly warm, not fresh, but maybe from the night before. The blanket looked old, musty, but it wasn't dumped. It was folded like whoever had used it meant to return. I stood up uneasy. This was private property 10 miles from the highway. No one had any business being out here. That's when I saw the footprints, barely noticeable at first. But once I caught the pattern, I couldn't unsee them. Heavy boot treads heading south, Toward my house, Scout barked again, more urgently this time. His tail was low, his hackles up. We followed the tracks across the field, moving slow. I scanned the distance for movement. Nothing. The prints led directly to my back porch. I felt my stomach tighten when I saw the door, light scratches near the handle like someone had tried to force it. That night, I locked every window and deadbolt, kept Scout inside, and left the outside lights on. I didn't sleep. Neither did he. Around midnight, he growled deep and low, the kind that makes your skin crawl. I grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand and crept to the window. The yard was still too still. Scout wouldn't stop pacing. His nails clicked on the floor, restless. I sat with my rifle across my lap until morning. The next day, I returned to the campsite. The fire pit looked undisturbed, but the blanket was gone. Whoever it was had come back, and that meant they weren't just passing through. For the next few days, I noticed signs, new footprints each morning. Sometimes just one set, sometimes more. Once I found a crushed cigarette near the barn. I don't smoke. Neither did my dad. Another morning, I spotted a print on the porch swing like someone had sat there in the dark watching the house. I didn't tell anyone at first. It's hard to explain that kind of unease, how it grows, how it eats at your sense of safety. I kept checking the cameras I'd installed a year earlier after a string of tool thefts in town, but nothing showed. Either they were smart or lucky, maybe both. Then came the night Scout went crazy. It was around 2:15 a.m. I woke to him barking wildly, snarling really. I rushed downstairs with the flashlight and rifle. As soon as I opened the door, he bolted, took off into the corn. "Scout!" I shouted, but he was already gone, his barks fading into the rose. I hesitated, then followed. The flashlight cut a narrow path through the dark, and that's when I saw it. A figure, maybe a man, darting between the stalks, quick, familiar with the layout. This wasn't their first time. I didn't chase them. I backed up and called the sheriff. They arrived in under half an hour. Scout came trotting back just as the cruisers rolled up, panting, tail wagging, a look of triumph on his face. My relief turned to dread when I saw his muzzle, blood, wet, dark, and thick around his mouth. One of the deputies knelt down. He hurt. I shook my head, not his blood. We retraced the route Scout had taken. About 50 yards into the field, they found it. Blood in the dirt. Not a lot, but enough. No body, no trail, just blood. Further toward the tree line, they found a coil of rope, a knife, sharp, military style. The handle was wrapped in tape, and it looked like it had seen some use. "Looks like they were planning something," one officer muttered. I didn't respond. I just looked at Scout. He sat next to me, calm again, his eyes on the dark rows of corn. I did what the deputies advised. Installed new cameras, motion lights, even got a neighbor to swing by more often, but it didn't feel like enough. 2 nights later, I was in the kitchen making coffee around 1:00 a.m. Couldn't sleep. Scout was lying by the back door. Suddenly, he lifted his head and growled. I froze. The porch light clicked on. A second later, the camera buzzed. I checked the screen. Nothing, no movement, but the light had been triggered. I stepped closer to the window and looked out. Someone had written something in the dew on the glass. 5 words crudely scrolled with a finger. "You shouldn't be here." My blood went cold. I ran outside, rifle ready. No one. The words were still wet, fresh. That night, I sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the monitors. Scout didn't leave my side. Around 3:00 a.m., the camera behind the barn glitched, static, then black. When it came back on, something was different. A pile of small stones had been stacked at the edge of the camera's view. I didn't put them there. They hadn't been there the day before. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. It felt like a warning, a message. I didn't know who I was dealing with, but I knew they weren't just some lost traveler. They knew the land. They were patient. Weeks passed. No more footprints. No more signs. I told myself it was over, but sometimes late at night, I still hear Scout growl, low and uncertain. I check the cameras. Nothing. The lights stay dark, but I can feel it. That same weight in the air, like the trees are listening again. Every once in a while, I walk the north perimeter. I don't go near the tree line anymore. Not alone. The fire pit's long gone. overgrown now, but that part of the land doesn't feel like mine anymore. It feels watched. I don't know what they wanted. Shelter, a place to hide, something darker. I hope I never find out, but I still keep the rifle by my bed. Scout sleeps at the door, and every morning before the sun comes up, we check the field just in case. In the city, I was constantly surrounded by motion, cars honking, people yelling, fluorescent buzz of convenience stores at 2 a.m. I'd been working as a veterinary assistant in a downtown animal clinic for over 5 years. Long hours, emergency surgeries, euthanasia calls. It all wore me down slowly, like a tide carving away at stone. After my third panic attack in 2 months, my doctor didn't mince words. You need to slow down or you're going to collapse. I was living in a tiny studio apartment, spending more time with animals than people, and wondering what the hell I was even doing anymore. So when I saw an online listing looking for a live-in farmland, someone to help, an older couple with daily chores in exchange for room, board, and a modest monthly stipend, I didn't even hesitate. It wasn't glamorous, but it was exactly what I needed. Quiet, routine, a break. The farm was located near a place called Ilo, a speck of a town in northeastern Nebraska, tucked between two long stretches of nothing but cornfields and empty sky. The listing was from a couple named Raymond and Ellen Carter, both in their 70s. They'd owned their land for over 40 years and raised livestock most of their lives. Their kids were grown, scattered across the country, and they needed help with the heavier work. We had a quick phone interview. Ellen's voice was soft but strong, and she reminded me a little of my grandmother. Within days, I was packing my things and driving 6 hours north with everything I owned in the back seat. The gravel driveway leading to the Carters' farmhouse crunched beneath my tires like brittle bones. It was early afternoon when I arrived. The house was exactly what you'd picture. 2 stories, faded white paint peeling in places, a wraparound porch with wind chimes made of old silverware, the barn, deep red and leaning ever so slightly. One side sat about 40 yards away. A silo stood like a silent sentinel in the distance. Raymond and Ellen greeted me on the porch. Raymond was tall, lean, and stoic, with a firm handshake and a tobacco-stained ball cap. Ellen had a sun-weathered face and a warm, tight-lipped smile. Something about them felt tired, not unfriendly, just used to loss, maybe. They showed me to my room upstairs. It was simple. A twin bed with a quilt, a wooden dresser, and a small window that overlooked the pasture and tree and beyond. It felt like a page torn from a 1970s photo album, and weirdly, that comforted me. The first few days passed quietly. I fell into a routine, feeding chickens, helping Raymond clean out the horse stalls, assisting with medication for a goat with a limp. Ellen handled most of the cooking, and we shared dinner at the table each night. We didn't talk much, but there was comfort in the silence. I slept better than I had in years until the 4th night. That night, I'd gone to bed early after a long day clearing out a section of the overgrown field. I remember reading an old paperback I'd found in a box under the bed, something about a haunted mansion, which felt like bad timing in hindsight. At around 12:30 a.m., I woke up suddenly. No noise, just a sensation, like my body knew something my mind didn't. The kind of deep primal dread you can't explain. I turned to the window and froze. There was a face looking in, pale, expressionless, not pressed against the glass, but close, eyes too wide, hair matted, watching me. My breath caught. I didn't scream, I couldn't. My whole body felt locked in place. After maybe 3 seconds, maybe more, it was just gone. Not like it ducked or walked away. Just was. I shot out of bed and pulled open the curtains. Nothing. The yard was bathed in moonlight. The barn was a dark silhouette in the distance. I barely slept the rest of the night. The next morning, I hesitated to say anything, but over breakfast, I blurted it out. Raymond, Ellen, has anyone ever come up to the house at night? Ellen looked at me, hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug. Why do you ask, sweetheart? I shrugged, pretending to laugh it off. Just thought I saw someone by my window. Might have just been a weird dream. Raymond shook his head slowly. Ain't no one comes out this far unless they got a reason, Ellen added, and we haven't had a neighbor within a mile since the Jurgens moved away last spring. They both seemed calm, but I noticed the way Ellen's eyes flicked toward Raymond. Quick, barely a second. That afternoon, I went out to check below my window. The soil was damp from a recent rain. Sure enough, I saw footprints, deep ones, wide. Not mine, not Ellen's. Someone or something had stood right there. The next few nights were worse. I started hearing sounds outside the house, not animal sounds. These were footsteps, slow, deliberate. Sometimes they circled the house. Sometimes they stopped just below my window and stayed there. Minutes would pass. The second time I saw the face, I was downstairs washing dishes. Ellen had already gone to bed. I looked up and there it was again. This time closer. Its expression hadn't changed. Its mouth hung slightly open like it was caught mid-breath. I screamed. Raymond came downstairs. Shotgun in hand, we searched the yard together, found nothing. That night, he sat across from me in the living room, the shotgun still leaning against his leg. "I don't want to scare you," he said quietly, "but you're not the first to see it." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "We've had other helpers over the years. One girl lasted 2 weeks. Another packed up in the middle of the night and left without saying goodbye." Ellen spoke from the kitchen doorway. They all saw the same thing, described it the same way. I felt cold all over. "So, what is it?" Raymond looked at the floor. "Don't know. Thought maybe it was a drifter or someone screwing with us, but nobody ever catches it. And the cameras, he nodded. Got a few set up outside. Motion activated. It never shows up, not even once. One evening, Ellen asked if I could help her bring something down from the attic. The stairs were narrow, creaking under each step. The attic smelled like dust and mothballs. Boxes lined the walls, and old family photos were scattered on a wooden table. One frame caught my attention. A black and white photo of a young boy, maybe 8 years old. Big eyes, a slight vacant smile. He looked familiar. "That's our son," Ellen said softly. Behind me, his name was David. "What happened to him?" She hesitated. "He got lost in the woods, never found him. This was 30 years ago." My throat went dry. "The woods behind the house," she nodded. "Search parties looked for weeks. We never saw him again, but after that, people started seeing things." I didn't know what to say. The last night I stayed on the farm, I locked my door, shut the curtains, and lay in bed with a flashlight clutched in my hand. Around 2:00 a.m. I heard it again. Footsteps, slower this time, scraping, dragging. I turned off the flashlight and crept to the window, lifting the curtain just a sliver. There it was, not just a face, a full figure now. Tall, too tall. Its arms hung low, hands almost touching the ground. It didn't move like a person. It shifted like a shadow underwater, and it was smiling, not a kind smile, a cruel, knowing one. It pointed at me, just lifted one long arm and pointed. I backed away, tripped, hit the floor. I didn't sleep, just waited for the sun. I left the next morning, told Raymond and Ellen there was a family emergency. They didn't argue, didn't even try to stop me. But as I loaded the last bag into my trunk, Ellen came over and placed a hand on my arm. "You're not crazy," she whispered, "and you're not alone. Whatever's here, it likes the quiet. It waits for people who need peace." She glanced back toward the woods, and then it follows them home. "It's been 6 months. I'm back in the city now. The noise is almost comforting, but last night I heard footsteps outside my apartment window, and this morning I found muddy prints on the fire escape. It followed me. If isolation ever seems too peaceful to be true, maybe it is. Share this story with someone who thinks the countryside is all sunrises and silence. Sometimes the quiet hides things that never stopped watching. In the city, I was constantly surrounded by motion, cars honking, people yelling, the fluorescent buzz of convenience stores at 2:00 a.m. I'd been working as a veterinary assistant in a downtown animal clinic for over 5 years. Long hours, emergency surgeries, euthanasia calls. It all wore me down slowly, like a tide carving away at stone. After my third panic attack in 2 months, my doctor didn't mince words. "You need to slow down or you're going to collapse." I was living in a tiny studio apartment, spending more time with animals than people, and wondering what the hell I was even doing anymore. So, when I saw an online listing looking for a live-in farmhand, someone to help an older couple with daily chores in exchange for room, board, and a modest monthly stipend, I didn't even hesitate. It wasn't glamorous, but it was exactly what I needed. Quiet, routine, a break. The farm was located near a place called Elo, a speck of a town in northeastern Nebraska, tucked between two long stretches of nothing but cornfields and empty sky. The listing was from a couple named Raymond and Ellen Carter, both in their 70s. They'd owned their land for over 40 years and raised livestock most of their lives. Their kids were grown, scattered across the country, and they needed help with the heavier work. We had a quick phone interview. Ellen's voice was soft but strong, and she reminded me a little of my grandmother. Within days, I was packing my things and driving 6 hours north with everything I owned in the back seat. The gravel driveway leading to the Carter's farmhouse crunched beneath my tires like brittle bones. It was early afternoon when I arrived. The house was exactly what you'd picture. 2 stories, faded white paint peeling in places, a wraparound porch with wind chimes made of old silverware. The barn, deep red and leaning ever so slightly to one side, sat about 40 yards away. A silo stood like a silent sentinel in the distance. Raymond and Ellen greeted me on the porch. Raymond was tall, lean, and stoic with a firm handshake and a tobacco-stained ball cap. Ellen had a sun-weathered face and a warm, tight-lipped smile. Something about them felt tired. Not unfriendly, just used to loss, maybe. They showed me to my room upstairs. It was simple. A twin bed with a quilt, a wooden dresser, and a small window that overlooked the pasture and tree and beyond. It felt like a page torn from a 1970s photo album, and weirdly, that comforted me. The first few days passed quietly. I fell into a routine, feeding chickens, helping Raymond clean out the horse stalls, assisting with medication for a goat with a limp. Ellen handled most of the cooking, and we shared dinner at the table each night. We didn't talk much, but there was comfort in the silence. I slept better than I had in years until the 4th night. That night, I'd gone to bed early after a long day clearing out a section of the overgrown field. I remember reading an old paperback I'd found in a box under the bed. Something about a haunted mansion, which felt like bad timing in hindsight. At around 12:30 a.m., I woke up suddenly. No noise, just a sensation, like my body knew something my mind didn't. The kind of deep primal dread you can't explain. I turned to the window and froze. There was a face looking in, pale, expressionless, not pressed against the glass, but close. Eyes too wide, hair matted, watching me. My breath caught. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My whole body felt locked in place. After maybe 3 seconds, maybe more, it was just gone. Not like it ducked or walked away, just was niched. I shot out of bed and pulled open the curtains. Nothing. The yard was bathed in moonlight. The barn was a dark silhouette in the distance. I barely slept the rest of the night. The next morning, I hesitated to say anything, but over breakfast, I blurted it out. Raymond, Ellen, has anyone ever come up to the house at night? Ellen looked at me, hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug. Why do you ask, sweetheart? I shrugged, pretending to laugh it off. Just thought I saw someone by my window. Might have just been a weird dream. Raymond shook his head slowly. Ain't no one comes out this far unless they got a reason, Ellen added. And we haven't had a neighbor within a mile since the Jurgens moved away last spring. They both seemed calm, but I noticed the way Ellen's eyes flicked toward Raymond. Quick, barely a second. That afternoon, I went out to check below my window. The soil was damp from a recent rain. Sure enough, I saw footprints, deep ones, wide. Not mine, not Ellen's. Someone or something had stood right there. The next few nights were worse. I started hearing sounds outside the house, not animal sounds. These were footsteps, slow, deliberate. Sometimes they circled the house. Sometimes they stopped just below my window and stayed there. Minutes would pass, but I needed her to open the door. I called out, "Ma'am." No answer. Then I heard the scratching again. Same door. Something in my gut told me to check. I crouched, put my eye to the keyhole. At first it was dark. Then an eye looked back. I jumped. A muffled voice cried out. Horse panicked, not a cat. Hello? I yelled. You okay in there? A loud bang erupted on the other side of the door. Then darkness. I felt the blow to the back of my head before I saw it coming. I woke up to fluorescent lights blinding me. My head throbbed. My vision swam. I was strapped to a chair, no, a contraption. My arms and legs were pinned. My shirt was stained with blood, and across from me was another man, skinny, sickly-looking, bones protruding from his skin. He was strapped into a similar chair and breathing heavily. The room was pristine, too clean, but it reeked of blood, rot, and bleach. The door opened, and in walked the woman, only now the wig was gone. The dress hung looser. The makeup was half-washed, revealing stubble and the unmistakable face of a man underneath. He walked in holding the wig like a dead animal. Sorry for the deception. He said, voice deeper now, but it's hard to get people out here without a bit of theater. What the hell is this? I shouted. He smiled like it was a compliment. I'm an artist, he said. And you're going to be my masterpiece? He pressed a button, and the chair across from me began to vibrate violently. The man in it screamed, not words, just pain. The shaking intensified. I saw blood trickle from his nose, then his ears. After 3 minutes, the shaking stopped. The man was dead. See, the captor said softly, no incisions, no mess, just internal trauma. Makes the skin easier to work with. He gestured behind me, and my chair rotated. That's when I saw them. Dozens of mannequins lined the back wall, each sculpture made from actual skin. Some were animal, shaped foxes, deer, even a bear, but others were human. Stretched faces, hanging eyelids, eyes that didn't fit right, staring down at me like they were pleading for death. These three, he said, pointing to the newest ones, are my latest all-local boys, too nosy for their own good. You're sick, I said, swallowing bile. I'm visionary. I needed a plan. Fast. Before you start. I said, faking desperation. Can I eat something? My wife made me a sandwich. It's in my bag. He raised an eyebrow. You're married, yeah. She'll call the cops if I don't text back by sundown. It's our thing. He hesitated. Fine, I'll bring your bag. He did. I saw him unzip it, rummage around. No weapons, no weapons. I lied as he handed it to me. I grabbed the bottle of cyperethane, one of the strongest chemicals I carried. Not meant for skin contact, let alone the eyes. I ripped the lid off and splashed it right in his face. He screamed, clawing at his eyes. It burns. You bastard! I kicked the side of my chair until one of the bolts popped loose. Adrenaline did the rest. I scrambled upstairs, boots slamming on wood. I remembered seeing a balcony on the second floor. I found it, flung the door open, and jumped. My ankle twisted when I landed, but I didn't stop. I limped. My car ripped the door open and turned the key. The house's front door opened. He stood there, half his face melted, one eye missing, still clutching the wig in one burned hand. He waved. I drove until I hit a gas station with people inside and collapsed in the parking lot. The cops came. I gave a statement. When they went to investigate, the house was gone, burned to the foundation. Authorities said the fire had happened a year ago. No mannequins, no bodies, but I know what I saw, and I still have that key. The one I yanked from his belt when I ran. A rusted old thing carved with the word form. I never took another job outside city limits.